All right, welcome to the Sweet Tarts of Fighting podcast. Today we have Peter Miller. Welcome, Peter.
Thanks for having me on.
No, thanks for coming. I came across your stuff. Actually, I think it was a short clip you did on hydration testing. It was on another podcast you were on, so obviously I had to bring you on here. But do you want to provide a brief background about yourself, and we'll go straight into it?
Yeah, so I run a company called Condition Nutrition, based working with fighters in Thai, MMA, boxing. I'm based in Perth, Australia, but originally from the UK. So yeah, my business is pretty much online, but try and get to as many fights and events as I can. But yeah, just try and get fighters to perform optimally, cut weight safely. And yeah, that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
Nice. The hardest thing is getting people to cut weight safely and do things properly. But we're gonna go straight into this hydration testing idea. I guess the idea of some organizations are trying to deter, I guess, extreme weight cutting and want to kind of monitor athletes throughout fight camp. And I wanted to get your take on this, on the idea of, okay, multiple weigh-ins, check-ins, hydration testing to see how do you see this as a deterrent for weight cutting? Is it working? Is there other things at play here that make this maybe not such a great idea?
So we go into the multiple weight checks, which happens quite a lot with me, with fighters that I work with, and especially in Thai. So, for example, the WBC have multiple weight checks. So a weight check 2 weeks out, a weight check 1 week out. And my opinion of it is just another hurdle for the fighter. The fighter's still going to... So, for example, I think the WBC have to be... I think it's 5% out 2 weeks out, and then 3% out 1 week out. Might have got that wrong, but it's around that anyway. And so all guys are doing is just they're cutting the weight 2 weeks out, and then they might jump in the bath or go for a long jog, and then they're just going to put that weight back on. It's just the same, and then the same again. 1 week out. It's just another hurdle, and it's not. I can understand why they're doing it, to try and stop big weight cuts, but you know as well as I do, fighters will think of any way to overcome something and you know, quote unquote cheat. So it's just present more hurdles in terms of the multiple weight checks, and in terms of the hydration stuff. You know there's a big organization that does hydration testing on the day of the weigh-in, so you've got to pass weight and pass a hydration test. But the problem with the hydration testing is using that as just a single measurement of that's your hydration status is basically it's bullshit. It's not a real indicator of hydration status in terms of, because there's so many factors that influence the score on that test. So if we go into a little bit of detail of so basically, they use a test called the urine-specific gravity test, which basically measures the density of urine compared to the density of water. So think about urine as 95% water, but 5% waste products. So waste products are urea, uric acid, creatinine, and other products as well. But they're pretty much byproducts of metabolism. But then what's in your urine is influenced by a lot of factors. For example, your body size, what you've eaten beforehand, the supplements you've taken, menstrual cycle. So I'll backtrack a little bit. So basically, when you are in a fluid deficit or you're dehydrated, your body releases hormones to conserve water in your body, so stop you losing water. So therefore, the concentration of your urine, because you're peeing out less water, the concentration of your urine goes up with them particles that I mentioned before. So in theory, that makes sense to use that test. But as I said, that there's so many factors that influence that test. You know, firstly, talk about muscle mass. So there's been a lot of studies on rugby players, wrestlers, that because they have quite a large amount of muscle mass, they break down a lot more, byproducts. So that comes out into the urine. So they've been shown that they naturally have higher USG values, which then potentially lead them to having false positives. So you think about when I've seen a lot of these hydration tests, because they do show them on YouTube, a lot of them are quite big guys. So they might have failed that test, not necessarily being down to being dehydrated, but
just
down to the bigger guys. Also, in terms of having a high protein diet, you have more protein in your diet, you're breaking down more amino acids, which ends up coming out into your urine as urea. So, high protein diet is a diet that most fighters typically have on fight week. If they want, the majority of fighters cut carbs out, so these lots of more high protein diets. So, that also increases your USG values. Also, if you have creatine in your diet, the waste product creatine is creatinine, which is a main byproduct in your urine. So even if you stop taking creatine on fight week, the washout period of creatine is about 4 weeks. Yeah. So you still creatinine concentrations are higher in your urine, so that could increase your USG values. So there's all these different factors that could potentially lead to having just a naturally higher USG value without even going into the weight cutting scenario. Also, what I forgot to mention about any high intensity activities. So you probably see guys smashing the pads, to cut that last bit of weight off. You're doing a high intensity activity, you're causing muscle damage, which then, that needs to go somewhere. So it's breaking down, that comes out into your urine, the proteins come out into your urine, which also can increase your USG values. So them using that test is just like, that's it. You fail that test, you're dehydrated. It's a lot more complicated than that. And unfortunately, I don't see them changing it anytime soon, because I think they've committed to it now. This is what we do. Yeah. We're the face of the solving the combat sports weight cutting issue, and it's just gonna, like, you've probably seen yourself how many guys fail hydration in this organization. Every event, there's always someone failing it, and the sad thing about it is because once they fail it, and then you've got basically if you fail it, you've got 3 hours to pass weight and hydration again, and then if you don't, it's either off or they have to be in a catch weight. So there's been main events that have gone on, that people are really looking forward to. This is for the title, and they've both failed hydration. So now it's ended up being a catch weight fight. So the viewers are missing out on what would be a championship fight.
Yeah. Now, I think Dr. Chris Kirk previously on the podcast talked about the idea of obviously the different ways that organizations are trying to curb the weight cutting, but it's just making fighters just cut weight more often, leading into fights, as you mentioned. But this is going to be a loaded question. Is there a scenario where you think the weight cutting issue or whatever it is could be solved? Is there some kind of protocol that could be in place, or is it just, it just needs to be better practices for what it is now, essentially?
I think it's just more the lines of education. I think, you can cut weight safely if you're doing the right things, not massive amounts of weight, but you've had people on your podcast for like Carl Lang and Evans mentioned about the acute and chronic weight loss. So you can lose, say 8% of your body weight on fight week by doing the right strategies beforehand. Have enough carbs, fiber, etc. So I think it's just more like the lines of education, because in my line, the amount of, for example, when someone will sign up with me and we go through the health assessments and we talk about what they've done beforehand, and some of the things they've done beforehand are shocking, and then they're getting their advice from the coaches, and the internet. So I have a little bit of it like a tick list. Like, where'd you get your information on? Your coaches, internet, and like majority of like people will get it from the internet, and it's like it's crazy. But I think there's more people in this space now who are dedicating their careers to educating fighters. So I think we're still a little bit behind in terms of other sports. If you looked at like soccer, football, etc., you wanted to know carbohydrate recommendations or fluid recommendations, you go onto Google, PubMed, you find hundreds of research articles. But in combat sport, there's not a lot. But you think in the next 10, 15 years that research you'd hope that research is emerging now in this area. So I just think it's just educating fighters about the right practices, and that's a good thing about social media now, that you can put that information out there. When in comparison to 20 years ago, it'd be John from the gym who's he's been fighting for 20 years now, but he's never missed weight, and you might
that guy's on Instagram too now.
John's weight cut advice.
Is there for that hydration test? Is there something that would be a better replacement, or is it just a matter of like you just can't? There's just no way to do it.
Well, to measure hydration really accurately, you need to do not just one measurement. You need to do a couple. So, for example, my housemate's doing a PhD in combat sports research up in EU with Dr. Oliver Barley, and his study is about the reliability of hydration methods. So he takes multiple measurements, so the blood, tear, urine. So there's quite a few measurements there. So if, say, they wanted to do it, quote unquote, properly, it'd be better doing multiple measurements, not just there they go, there's the hydration session. That's black and white gold standard. But are they really going to do that? It's time consuming. You've got an event, and you've got
probably expensive too.
Expensive, and the thing is, from what I gather with this organisation, they don't have any kind of like. So with the UFC, they have like the State Athletic Commission wherever they go in America. With this organisation, it's just they rule. They rule themselves. There's no one to sort of answer to, so they can just make up the rules as they go, kind of thing. And also, we could talk about what people do to actually pass the test. Go into that. Yeah. So this is what I've used with my guys and girls. I've got, I think, 8 fighters in one championship. So a method that what a lot of fighters do is they'll say you needed to lose a kilo, you lose 2 kilos, and then straight away you drink 1 litre of water. Because basically, if you drink the water in the space of maybe 5-10 minutes, so what happens if you drink that water really quick? The kidneys don't, the body protects itself from fluid overload. So if you drink it really quick, the kidneys go, okay, we don't like this. You end up flushing out that urine really quickly. So then when you end up going to do the test, your piss is clear. So that's a method that a lot of guys do. But that's not a lot of method. The majority of people do that, and everyone in one knows that's the method to kind of do things. But there's still people that fail it. So as we were talking about before, the other factors will still influence that. Yeah. So it's a crazy topic, because you try and explain it on I've tried to explain it on my Instagram page, and it's trying to explain to the normal fighter. It's just such a complicated area to go down. It's a big rabbit hole, and people think you're hating on this organisation. I got guys in this organisation. I'm trying to show people that it's not the best method to do things, but yeah, hopefully they'll change it, but I can't see it changing anytime soon.
Before getting back to the podcast, I want to let you know there's a link down in the description for the Swedes Art of Fighting underground community. you can get all the help you need for your combat sports training. You get every single Sweet Arts of Fighting training program, online course, and you get access to a range of coaches within the private Discord community. So go check that out, and back to the podcast. Yeah, I actually wanted to stay on this topic of hydration and come into the idea of, I guess, sports drinks as well. Like hydration, obviously, I mean, this doesn't have to be purely as weight cutting, just training and like just general day to day. Obviously, sports drink market is huge. Obviously, Powerade, Gatorade, whatever else, you can pull whatever off the shelf. But what should a sports drink be composed of to adequately, I guess, rehydrate you from training or help you during training, in terms of, obviously people just talk about, electrolytes, this and glucose, whatever, but obviously there's different variations of electrolyte balance and things like that, and how much potassium, sodium, whatever you're going to get. So is there a brand that you would recommend there, and what kind of breakdown are you looking at in terms of electrolytes and things like that?
So firstly, we probably go into like what your actual, your sweat composition is when you
sure.
Like, when you sweat to cool your body down, so you lose water and electrolytes. The main electrolytes that are lost are sodium and chloride. Of electrolytes are magnesium, potassium, calcium. That's the main electrolyte, sodium. It does vary between individuals. So, so people are salty sweaters. This can be influenced, obviously, on your heat acclimation status, the clothing you wear, and the temperature, etc. But sodium is the main electrolyte. So this is the post that I put out the other day about, there's a lot of, the celebrities endorsing rehydration products, and they say, it contains electrolytes. Great, it contains electrolytes, but what is the actual composition of the electrolytes? So, for example, this one I was talking about, the main electrolytes, I think, was magnesium, potassium, and you lose very little magnesium, potassium in your sweat. Very little. It's mainly sodium. So if sodium's not the main electrolyte in that drink composition, I would say avoid it, because you're really wasting your money, because the main aim of electrolyte drink is to replenish your electrolyte source. If you're not getting what it says, what you need, what's the point in buying it? You could do it for because I've seen some of these, the Jake Paul one and KSI.
Yeah.
It was like $35 for like 6 drinks. Like, that's absolutely
no way, really?
So it was something really, like, it was ridiculously priced. And I was like, I see newspaper articles and like people fighting in stores to get this hydration.
Oh, I saw that. Yeah,
it's like it's crazy the way people just automatically think, oh, this celebrity's bringing out this hydration drink, it must be good. So in terms of like what to look out for, electrolyte solution or powder, it's got to be sodium, the main electrolyte, sodium. And in terms of the composition, you probably want to be aiming for like 500 milligrams to a gram of sodium in each serving. Obviously, the more sodium, the more it tastes a little bit saltier. But good brands like Hydrolyte. I know Geordie, the fight dietitian, got a really good one, Train Aid. There's also a brand called SIS that do hydro tablets, which are really easy to use. You pop them in your drink. So it's just trying for the average fighter or people trying to get fit is just looking for a good brand and looking at most good reputable supplement companies tend to have an electrolyte powder or supplement. So yeah, my message on the post that I did is like, don't follow the crowd. Don't just because it's a popular drink, because you're just wasting your money.
For sure. Is there because I know a lot of people kind of fall into that trap. Oh, I got to have a sports drink. Doesn't matter what training I'm doing, I'm going to have a sports drink for rehydration. But is there a point, or maybe a training status, where having electrolytes isn't really necessary? I'm assuming, like, obviously, if you're not sweating a lot, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, and also going into knowing what your sweat composition is very difficult to know unless you went into a lab and there's a method where basically you're in a chamber and you perform an exercise protocol and you sweat, and then they take the sweat with water, and then the basically measures like, are you, what's your composition of sweating? Are you a salty sweater? Are you not? So it's very difficult to determine that. But in terms of like training, I always recommend, especially over here in Perth, it's run from home. If you're doing any
I'm in Texas, so I feel you.
If you're doing any kind of like exercise session which is over an hour, and it's medium to high intensity, that's a focus on getting some electrolytes in your drink composition. Yeah, and that's like the rule of thumb I go down. If it's like under an hour, it's like a lower intensity. And it's also saying to the fighter, like, seeing what their sweat rate is. Are they heavy sweaters? Are they not? So really based on the individual, because I know guys who like they'll do exercise for like 10-15 minutes and the sweat is absolutely pouring off, and then don't sweat at all. So it's really
the worst people to be on the mats with, eh?
Yeah.
Someone that sweat all of you after the warm-ups.
Oh yeah, you do the warm-ups and covered in sweat. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's really just like knowing what type of sweater you are. And there's also a really good article and Asker you can drop he's got on his My Sports Science website, and it's how to calculate your sweat rate. And I always forward that to my fighters to say, look, it's a little bit of homework for you to do. Follow this protocol and actually see what your sweat rates are, and also just get the athlete to know a little bit about the sweat.
Obviously, that changes as well depending on. Obviously, you mentioned the climate there, but I guess even on if someone's fighting under lights and things like that too, you've got a lot of heat there. So I'm assuming that would obviously change maybe what you're also taking in on actual competition day.
Yeah, 100%. And also with the heat acclimation status, one of the benefits of heat acclimation is increased sweat rate, but also your electrolytes become your sweat becomes more dilute. So you lose less electrolytes in your sweat. So there's a lot of factors that influence. Obviously, I mentioned about the clothing you're in, genetics, temperature, wind speed. But yeah, it's unfortunately there's nothing that's come out with solid evidence to give to fighters to actually measure the sweat composition, which I think would be awesome to see, because you can personalize the rehydration strategies a lot more then.
Yeah, for sure. And I wanted to also go down the road of eating while injured, because I think people fall into the trap of, and I know I've heard a lot of athletes from various sports, they'll get injured and they'll think, okay, I'm going to use this time now to get shredded. Yeah. And so it means I'm going to reduce my calorie intake basically, or not eat carbs or whatever, but they're dealing with a traumatic injury, they just had surgery, et cetera, et cetera. So what's your advice for people who might be suffering an injury, are training less, and what they should do with their nutrition?
Yeah, this is like a really interesting topic that I've gone down a bit recently, because I've got one of my fighters who's injured, got a knee injury, and I think a big myth is, like, as you mentioned, like, you're injured, I'm just going to completely reduce my calorie intake and cut carbs out, and that is potentially one of the worst things you can do, because in a time when you're injured, you're inactive, say you're on crutches, your legs are mobilized, you're basically your muscles gonna reduce in size because it's inactive. So completely cutting the calories down is not going to help in that recovery process. So I always like the fundamentals of keeping your protein intake high. Research has shown around, like, if you're hitting the 2 grams per kilogram mark. Also,
would you go higher while recovering from injury, or you kind of
I think that's like I think that's a minimum. I think to keep it, at least 2 grams per kilogram. And in terms of always eating a calorie maintenance, because if, say, like, as you said, like, I'm losing weight, I'm not injured, I'm cutting the weight down, but that's not going to help in the the recovery process, and also with keeping the protein intake high, that can attenuate. You know, you are going to lose some muscle mass. It attenuates that a little bit. Also with creatine intake too, there's been studies that have shown that when the leg's been immobilized and you're having a supplement with creatine, that can help attenuate the loss of strength and muscle mass. Fish oils as well with anti-inflammatory properties. I think it's just getting just fundamentals right. I think there's, you know, when I've got guys who are injured, like, right, keep the protein intake high, spread the protein feedings across the day, make sure that you are in a, you know, calorie maintenance. And yeah, it's interesting because people automatically think, oh, I'm injured. What supplements? What magic bullet's going to take to, you know, enhance the, you know, quicken the process? And it's just getting the fundamentals right. Protein intake high, eating lots of fruits, and vegetables. You know, the creatine, the fish oils, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Really, I think it's just getting the fundamentals right. And there's been studies that have shown I remember watching a lecture when I was in uni about, there was a guy who broke his leg in a soccer match, and they basically did the similar scenario, keep the protein intake high, took what the creatine fish oil, and actually when he came back from his injury, his strength has improved. He actually in his injured leg, I think muscle mass in his leg was increased just from doing them fundamentals. So I think the time of being injured can be an opportunity to get your nutrition in check.
Yeah, and I think people also they see injury as, okay, I can't do anything, but there's always something you can do training wise as well to kind of help with the nutrition too.
Well, I think as well with fighters, they're injured and like, I've had instances with the fighters I work with, like, they're injured and they're itching to get back, like, and sometimes that can be a detriment because they started training too quickly, and, you know, the knee's gone again or they're injured again. So it's like it's also going into the space of, you know, making sure the fighter does have someone in that background, that S&C physio background, where they've actually got something to follow. It's like, oh, I'm injured. I'm just going to go when I feel like. I'm just going to wing it. I'm just going to go when I feel like. Because I think that definitely like with the top level guys that I work with, they always have like an SC coach, physio, but like lower level, amateur level, sometimes I have seen things where they've gone back too quickly and they got injured again. But that's another go down.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough when obviously it's a monetary thing too, because there's not much money there's not much money at many levels, but especially when you're, you know, maybe like a recreational competitor or maybe someone looking to go pro, those don't have that support network there. And as you mentioned, coming back too early, especially when the actual rehab hasn't been done. It's more like just rest and then straight back into it once they maybe don't feel pain anymore. That's where like the big problems come, because it doesn't matter how long you rest. If you haven't done anything on it, it's not going to be any better. It's probably going to be worse.
Do you think like, oh, I can, you know, I feel all right now. I can move it around, and you go straight into a sparring session, like, oh, it's gone again. And like, it's as you said about the support network, it is quite hard to obviously have all boxes ticked, like working with a nutritionist, working with an S&C coach or physio, you know, for the recreational fighter, you know, it's the cost that you got to look into as well, I suppose.
Yeah, for sure. And I know you did some stuff, I guess some content on nutrition on a budget. That was actually a good segue when we were talking about money. Yeah. So obviously, I guess we could talk about economics and inflation and everything else going on with prices going up. And the price of food, people will talk about, buying healthy food is more expensive than eating out, doing whatever it is. So do you want to jump into some of your favorite, I guess, budget nutrition tips for that anyone can use?
I think firstly is, in terms of if we're looking at anyone who eats meat, is always looking for a meat wholesaler. Like I found, especially when I was back in the UK, if you find a meat wholesaler, you can get a lot of, for example, chicken breast in bulk instead of going to the supermarket and buying 3-pack of chicken breast. I'm trying to I'm used to 2 different currencies. Also, if you go to UK, you get 3-pack of chicken breast would be £6, which is $10, I think. And then, but you find a good wholesaler, you could get 20 chicken breasts for £20. But obviously, it's fine the one. But there is ones about if you just got to do your research, and that I found massively helps with a lot of UK fighters that are working. Search for you, even the butcher, go into a butcher and say, look, I eat a lot. I'm a fighter. I'm in fight camp. These are the foods these are the meats that I typically have. Can we do some kind of thing, a deal? Because I'm going to be buying 10 kilos of chicken a week. And a lot of the time, from my experience, they tend to do deals from that.
Okay.
So I think that firstly, also, which is a big cost. You probably know yourself when you go and find a new recipe and you get all the seasons and spices. I'm like, fucking hell, I spent £20 spices here. I think a lot of continental supermarkets, Indian groceries, Chinese supermarkets, going there, they're a hell of a lot cheaper. I found
typically bigger packs as well, right? Bigger packs of spices.
So you go to supermarkets over here and you get a little chili powder and it's $3, but you go to the Indian grocery or whatever and you get a big massive bag and it's maybe $2 more. So I think it's just being smart and the seasoning spices. That I think that's probably one of the biggest savers. I think going to continental supermarkets where you are. Obviously, it is dependent on where you live in areas. So you need to do your research. Also, stocking up on frozen fruit and veg. That could be a big saver, especially with fruit. I'm a massive fan of frozen mixed berries for smoothies and stuff like that. And the good thing about them is the long lasting. You can just put them back in the freezer and they're good to go. A lot of times you buy them, oh shit, I've got them in the fridge, and you look at them, there's a little bit of mold or whatever. So that's also a benefit from doing that. Same with the veg as well. That tends to be a lot cheaper. So I think it's crazy because when I've mentioned this to fighters, where'd you go get your shopping, and they'll mention the most expensive supermarket in the UK, for example. How much you spend a week? Oh, I spend right, we probably save a good £30-40 a week here just by it might take a little bit longer, going traveling 15 minutes away to go to that Indian or continental supermarket. But as you said about inflation and the cost of living and stuff now, it's worth it. Yeah, 100%. Because that's a barrier that I see a lot, especially when guys and girls sign up. It's I don't want to spend too much on food. Can you make it as simple as possible? I want to put the cost down. So doing them little tips, as I said, you can save a little bit of money each week.
Nice.
The adherence to the plan is better because if you're I'm spending X amount, £100 a week on my food, and I'm I need to cut costs down.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Did you know you can represent Sweet Arts of Fighting while you're training? We're more than just a membership. We also have rash guards and shorts. If you're watching this on YouTube, you'll see that we have the Sweet Arts of Fighting 2.0 shorts, and we also have the Sweet Arts of Fighting short and long sleeve rash guard. There is another design coming soon, but you can get those on X Marshall, deter.com, and you can go down in the description and you can find that. And back to the podcast. What's your go-to, I guess, for people? Maybe there's amateur fighters out there, they don't want to go through the hassle of maybe tracking their macros, tracking their calories down to a T. What's like your ideal kind of meal composition? Maybe what you're looking at on a plate, like eyeballing. I don't know if that's an easy one to kind of explain on a podcast, but how are you looking to do that?
I think it all really depends on what they're doing. If say, based around the training schedule, say they've got really hard sparring session at, say for example they wake up and they're like, I got a 2-hour sparring session at 10 o'clock. Mm-hmm. Okay, like the composition of the meal, we need to get, we need to fuel the training session with carbohydrates. So, the main focus for that meal would be a decent amount of carbohydrates. So, for example, something like, I'm a big fan like overnight oats with yogurt pot. In terms of, is it actually? I'm trying to think of a better way of saying it really about the composition of the meal, because I think it's just mainly just focusing on, always having like a lean source of protein.
Yeah.
Good carbohydrates, vegetables. I'm probably really butchering this now.
No, that's good. Yeah. But what will make it easier, I think, say that sparring day example. How would meals look throughout the day then, and how would that composition change? Maybe that will give a little more structure.
I think if you're training twice a day. So if you
sure.
You were sparring at 10 o'clock and you had them oats or good carbohydrates in the morning, then post training, because you know that you're going to be training later on, then you need them carbohydrates to fuel for the following session. So I understand that I hate saying like the chicken rice kind of dish, but lean protein.
Can't hate on chicken and rice, man. I eat chicken and rice almost every day.
the chicken. I only say this actually because like people, I always say, "Oh, don't worry, me plans aren't chicken, rice, and broccoli." I just always
but then it is.
Like a good source of protein, good carbohydrate. Rice, pasta, potatoes. Always having, at least a palm size of vegetables too. And just always having like a good serving of protein throughout the day. I think in terms of, my mind's just gone blank there. Yeah, in terms of like recovery after the session too, like you're training the following day in the morning. Another emphasis is, the meal has carbohydrates in it too. So I think I really butchered that question. Sorry.
It's good because you've given some examples there for before and after sparring, which is awesome. I actually want to get your take on as well. Obviously, there's a shit ton of meal delivery services now, so people can almost kind of get everything delivered to them. I don't know. Maybe you have some fighters that do that too. I was looking at them the other day, and I was like, "Holy shit!" Like a lot of them are like really high fat, very moderate to low carbohydrate, and typically like normal high protein. If someone's going to go down that road, do you think they would need to somehow like almost substitute or increase the carbohydrate intake, like have some of their own stuff on the side? Because if I was going to do 3 or 4 meals of those, I guess meal delivery things, it would be like 120 grams of carbs, which would be like nothing if you're training hard enough.
Well, this is actually an interesting topic about meal prep, because I've had a lot of like debates with fighters who use them, because the ones that do have like the macros on them, as you said, like if it's on there, like to get them carbohydrates in, you will have to include additional carbohydrate yourself, like sports drink, or even adding a bit of extra rice if it's a rice dish, getting a pack of rice and putting a little extra in. But in terms of a lot of the meal preps, I've found is it's very hard to control. Like they'll say X amount in that meal. It's 420 calories, for example.
Yeah.
And then you look at it and think, your eyeball, like, I'm not too sure about this. So I'll give a really good example actually. So I had a guy who was on, he was having a meal prep. It was a local meal prep, but it was saying all the macros on the meal. And then I said, he wasn't losing any weight. And I was like, we worked out all his calories, like, he should be losing weight. I went, can you do me a favour? Can you, like, send me a picture of a couple of meals or a video? And he said, I've been having the salmon every day. Like, he give me the salmon. She sent a video of the salmon. The salmon was like a cricket bat. Like, I've never seen a bigger piece of salmon. And, like, the macros of the meal was like, it was like salmon and rice. It was like 400, like 400 calories. And honestly, there was no way that was 400 calories. Like, absolutely, like, no way. The salmon was huge. The salmon was probably like 500 calories itself.
And, dude, I want that meal prep company. I want that much food in my...
And I was like, there's something not right here. So I ended up messaging him saying, like, look, be honest with me, like, because he was fighting for the world title. So, like, you know, getting that whole thing dialed in, it's important. And they were like, yeah, we measure out every day. And I was like, I wasn't buying it at all. And I actually told them to stop using the meal prep, which we did in the end, because they were saying, oh yeah, it's all measured out, and there was absolutely no way it was measured out. No way. Like, honestly, like, the salmon, I was like, no wonder he bloody loves that dish, because the salmon was massive. But
did he weigh it?
That's a big issue that I've had with a lot of fighters. Oh, I'm sponsored by this meal prep now. Mm-hmm. Giving me my food for my fight camp. And then you look at the composition of the meal, as you said, and, like, there's not a lot of veg in it. It doesn't look like there's a lot of carbs in it. Looks at it like, you know, the fat content seems to be a little higher than what we'd like. Yeah. So, but then you got the crossover with the fights, like, well, I'm getting me meals.
Well, like, if they're getting them free,
It's like, you know what, like, you know, so, like, I've had, like, a guy who's with me now who's on a meal prep. I encourage him to, because some of the meals have got absolutely zero veg in, so I get him to buy the steamed packs of veg.
Yeah.
And it's like, always add them to meals, because some of them contain absolutely zero veg. Yeah, it's an interesting topic, the meal prep. There is good meal preps out there, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But a lot of them that fighters use in terms of local ones, every time someone says a meal prep, I'm like, it gives me, like, anxiety thinking, oh. And it's always send over photos, like, send me photos of each meal, because I want to see. Send me, like, I'm quite, like, I don't know what the word to describe it for. I'm quite rigid and say, like, I want to see them, because I can't just take what they say. Yeah. I need to have that sort of element of control. The thing that there's I'm waffling on it, so it's like an element of control that you don't have. So you're putting your trust into them, and, like, are they that invested in the fighters you are? If that makes sense. If it's just a meal prep, giving his meals, like, I want to see exactly what he's having, and, like, yeah, it's I went off on one then, but yeah, it's an interesting. It's good. Yeah.
Have you ever had your fighters weigh the actual food that's coming?
That salmon one I told you about, it was meant to be 150 grams of salmon. It was 380 grams of salmon.
Damn, I want that meal prep company. I want double the serving of what they're charging me.
I said to him, out of camp, I said, that's fine. You can, you know, that's good travel. Not when we're trying to lose the weight. It's like, yeah, it's as I said, there is good ones out there. There's one in Australia called My Muscle Food, and they sell them in the shops. And when I've used them, but they still lack as you mentioned about the fat content's a little bit higher, and the carbs.
It's like 30 grams of fat per meal. A lot of them. And I'm like,
and like, never really hit over, like, the 40 gram mark of carbs. A lot of them I find. And also a lot of them are, like, if you're buying them, they're pretty expensive. Well, I find.
Oh yeah.
And then you're like,
now with all the competition, it's like over 10. A lot of them are like $13 a meal, and it's like 400 or 500 calories. Yeah, like, holy shit! Like, imagine doing that multiple times a day. Like, and most of them are just use, like, I mean, carbohydrate sources are so cheap, like rice, pasta, whatever it is, potatoes. That's like a few cents. And then they charge you $13. I guess for the convenience is what you're really paying for.
And also, I suppose, like, I've seen a lot of them. They look so bland. Like, it literally is just like chicken, rice, and broccoli. And I think, I don't think I could eat that for, like, if I was a picture of being a fighter, like, in an 8-week camp, I think, I'd rather just cook myself.
What's your favorite ways to, I guess, provide variety in your foods in terms of maybe sauces and spices that aren't going to start adding a shit ton of, I guess, calories and things you don't want?
I think spices are important because I'm a big fan of like the spice mixes. You know, the Cajun spice mixes. You know, Mexican, like Indian spice.
Oh, but I'm assuming you're looking out for pre-made ones that have, because a lot of them have sugar in them, right? A lot of the pre-made mixes.
This is the thing where you need to sort of look at the content in a lot of these packets. But another benefit, if you wanted to, is combine them. So a lot of for example, the Cajun spice mix, main ingredients like a Cajun spice mix, like paprika, oregano, cumin. So if you buy them, Joe, as I mentioned before, you got them in bulk. You can combine them and make your own spice mix. I think topic like is very important for like. That's why I try and make my meals like as enjoyable as possible. And if I can, I'm actually a trained chef as well, so I'm always interested in like
that's a bonus then
flavors and stuff, because if you're in an 8 to 10 week camp and you're eating really bland foods, it's just not enjoyable. So like that's a big emphasis on like my work is making sure the meals are packed with flavor and that there's lots of herbs and spices to it. Because there's nothing worse than just. I've seen like guys post stuff on like Instagram stories. Oh, the fight camp starts and it's like just a little bit of chicken.
I'm gonna suffer more.
It's like, oh. And I actually did a video on this on my Instagram talking about like, are you a good cook? It is important to like have some basic skills in the kitchen, because I think that makes a massive difference. As we said, like, if you can only cook the equivalent to power foods for 8 to 10 weeks, it's going to be a drag. But if you're like, you know what, I've got some good skills here. I enjoy cooking. I think that makes a massive difference in terms of, fight camp's never enjoyable, but it makes it the cooking experience a bit more enjoyable.
Yeah, because I think people get in the mindset, as you mentioned, I'm just having plain dry food because I'm cutting weight, but you can still have all that stuff as long as you're fitting it in whatever your eating plan is, and then cooking it yourself and I guess using ingredients that you can measure out and know exactly what you're getting versus going in and maybe you love fried chicken. You can make fried chicken in your air fryer with less fat, using hand-cooked breadcrumbs or whatever else. And there's so many different things you can do.
Well, I think as well, like on my plans, I've got like burritos, I've got pastas, Mexican, and it's like, as you said, well, so my plans are on an app. So like when I put the plans over and they mess me, I've got tacos this week. It's just like that little psychological little boost, like, I'm having this this week, and I think it definitely helps, like massively in terms of the fight camp experience.
Yeah, for sure. Are there any sauces that are kind of your go-to? Because obviously a lot of sauces can either be a high sugar, high fat kind of thing, which can be an issue. But is there anything you like to use?
So there's a couple of Mexican ones called, I think it's one Cholula. It's got like a wooden.
Oh yeah, that's my go-to, Cholula. In fact, I've got a few in the cupboard. All those hot sauces are 0 calorie.
Also talk about this. What I've got quite a few guys to do is like, say you like spicy mayo, getting like buying like a light mayonnaise or like like really low fat mayonnaise, and getting like I've got a chili paste, and then you mix it together and you actually make your own mayo. And there's a Korean mayo that I use quite a lot, which I put quite a few of my guys onto, is it's like a gochujang paste. It's like a red chili paste. So just basically buy a tub of the light mayonnaise, mix it in, and you've got your own kind of mayonnaise.
Oh, nice.
So obviously it's not everyone's gonna be really handy in the kitchen and wanting to do stuff like that, but it's just educating and going, right, we can have these sauces, but we can make little swaps here and there. But in terms of like Nando's sauce, like the Nando's sauce, have you had that before? That's okay. But like, I think it's been in terms of like with my recipes, I'll mention like how much to put in, because if you just say like, oh
yeah,
you can put a little bit of sweet chili sauce, and the next minute you look at the distance is absolutely drenched in sweet chili sauce. There's like 200 calories from just pure sugar.
Yeah, there's definitely those sauces can almost take you over your calorie count pretty quickly if you're not careful. Especially like those ones loaded with sugar, or ones that are just like pure fat. I think the Nando's ones are fat based with the oil, so that makes it even easier to go over.
Yeah, the Nando's ones, yeah, I think it's good in a way that I think in terms of sauces that they've not. And this sounds weird, but like the sauces are only small. I think like the Nando's,
yeah,
I think they're really big. Like people, just when you go to Nando's, they do it in the big sauces only, and the people are just like. So I think it helps the control a little bit better.
Yeah, I think all the Americans listening to this are wondering what the hell we're talking about, but it's basically a chicken place around around parts of the world that's pretty damn good. They do like grilled chicken and roast chickens and stuff like that, but. Yeah, I digress. Back to the focus. But I think that's everything else that you're going to ask you, Peter. If people want to follow you and find what you're up to, where can they do that?
It's probably best to hit me up on Instagram, Condition Not Nutrition. I should be the first person that pops up. So yeah, if you ever need any advice or they want to ask any questions, yeah, I'm pretty active on there, so pretty good to respond.
Perfect. And I'll link that in the description too. So if anyone wants to get in touch with Peter, you can head there, follow him. I'll put his website down there too, and you guys can find all that. But thanks for coming on, Peter. I really appreciate it.
Okay, my pleasure.